Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Dataverse community meeting. We're absolutely thrilled to have you here. Fortunately, this year not in person, but still we're all together here remotely. Just first, thank you for joining us and a very warm welcome to all of you. We're going to start with just a small introduction to the meeting. First of all, I just want to introduce myself for those who don't know me. I'm Mercè Crosses. I'm with Harvard University with the Institute for Quantitative Social Science and Harvard University IT. And I've been with Dataverse for 15 years, leading many aspects of it and contributing, like many of you, to data sharing in the research with the researchers community to improve access to data, reusability of data, reproducibility of research results, and general improving research with data sharing. So we've had so far 5 Dataverse community meetings. They've been hosted in Harvard University at those times that we could all be in person in one same room. This picture is from the very first Dataverse community meeting. But we also had a regional Dataverse community meeting, the European Dataverse Workshop, hosted in the beautiful Tromsø town in the Arctic, in the University of Norway. And this picture shows at the time what we have, how you see Tromsø in January. So that's as light as it gets, pretty much. So I'm going to start with some data about the Dataverse community. We are about sharing data, and we want to show you our own data about how we're doing. So we have 60 Dataverse repositories, sites around the world. Some of them support research data for an organization, some for multiple organizations, some for the universities of an entire country. We have 22 of those members of those Dataverse repositories are members of the Global Dataverse Community Consortium, which we started a little bit more than a year ago. We have 32 of those Dataverse repository sites that contribute to community metrics. And those metrics show us that we have 6,650 dataverses or collections of data sets, 131,000 data sets, 635,000 files, 8,700,000 downloads of these files. We have 110 developers contributing to GitHub Dataverse repo. And we have a total in the GitHub repo for the Dataverse core open source software. We have done 1,520 pull requests, 17,234 commits, 45 releases since Dataverse 4.0, since it's in the GitHub. And we have done in this last year, since the last community meeting in June 2019 until now, we've processed 1,049 support tickets. We've had 40 community calls since this time, since the last community meeting, which many of you have participated. 305 people have participated in those community calls. We've got 23,464 IRC messages. Some of you in this community, 98 unique users, are very active communicating back and forth on development issues. And we have 631 Google Group members. We've had this last year 1,300 discussion topics. And we have about 5,000 Twitter followers. We welcome more, just an opportunity now to join, and we have had 2,800 tweets. So I would say we're a solid community. We're in a great place. We have had a steady growth, and we show how solid we are with an incredible help across the Dataverse sites around the world. And it gets reflected in the Google Groups discussions, where members of the community help each other constantly. And so it's beautiful what we've done, where we've grown, and to see that it's a friendly, open community. And very importantly too, it's a community of inclusivity and diversity. It's a community that very clearly we want to say that we condemn any form of racism, and we want to be inclusive of any members, any views, and with respect, friendliness, and consideration for each other. And we've been doing that so far, and want to continue doing it. And if whatever we can do better, please let us know. So today, though, now we will start with, although there are many challenges in the world, and with data, we're hoping to help with some of the challenges. Even with the racism challenge, we can help with transparency and getting more data. It's not only a data problem, but data can help. But we're going to talk today about another very imminent challenge we have with COVID-19 data. COVID-19 and the crisis, the coronavirus crisis. But how we can, this is a problem actually that where the data can help a lot, and not only can help, but is essential to solving the problem. So we want to talk about how data sharing is helping COVID-19. What are we doing with the Dataverse community to provide support for data sharing COVID-19 data? And then we will have a panel after the presentations about some data sets in Harvard Dataverse and in other Dataverses about COVID-19 data. We'll have a panel with the discussion about recommendations and what we need to do to improve data sharing of COVID-19 data. So we will start now with first with Slava Tikhonov, a senior data scientist at DAN in the Netherlands, who will talk about the European COVID-19 data sets and corona-wide community. And then we'll have Wendy Guan, the executive director of the Center for Geographic Analysis at Harvard University, that will talk about the China Data Lab and resources for COVID-19. And then we will have Toy Nguyen, Director of Poverty, Gender, and Youth Program of Population Council, who will talk about COVID-19 data from the Population Council. Please, Slava, you have the next.
Okay, hi everyone.
You have the screen.
Yeah, okay, so.
While Slava is getting ready, I'd like to inform you that you can ask questions using the Q&A tool that you will see at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You can also ask comments in the chat, but mostly we will take questions from the Q&A tool. You can also, if you want to, at some point, ask a question by just raising the hand, you could do that. But again, what we're going to be looking mostly is that Q&A, so please enter questions there if you have them. Thank you, and welcome, Slava.
Hi everyone, my name is Slava Tikhonov and I'm from DANS, this is institution from Netherlands, and I'm going to tell you something about COVID-19 Europe datasets and about corona-wide community. And first of all, I want to tell you about a situation before pandemic, how it started in Europe. So actually, when it started in March 2020, we had no open data and something that can be considered like fair data on COVID-19 at all. And mostly official information was published as, like slides and PDFs. So it was not possible to get some tables, only just to get some OCR texts, and there are no code books or metadata available in some common standards. And people basically started to use like popular sources from Johns Hopkins Coronavirus Research Center. And basically they started to produce different dashboards showing exactly the same insights. And official public data on COVID-19 were made available in national languages without any translations in most of cases, and even with different metrics. So it was not possible to analyze and to predict what is going to happen next. And in this situation, all researchers in Europe had to reinvent the wheel and standardize data basically on their own. So it was the reason why I decided to create this COVID-19 Coronavirus Europe data hub. And first, I started with Netherlands. And we have a national agency that publishing data, but it was not possible to get any data like in open data in some format. So there is a group of volunteers basically that started to scrape data and publish in GitHub, and this is how it started. So I approached them and I helped them to create description and to create some metadata. And after I started to use, I created this hub and started to use Harvard Dataverse to publish first data sets. And I just basically archived all data that they already collected and started to put in Dataverse. And after next hub in Spain, I was locked in for 7 weeks in Spain in that time. So I approached Spanish volunteers and I started to do exactly the same. I started to advise on code books and on metadata formats. And we managed to create second hub, and after it started to grow. So now I have more than 3,000 downloads and also data from Italy and from Austria. And I use it as a kind of example how data can be collected and standardized. So at some point I decided, okay, now we have a lot of information, a lot of data, so why not to do processing and to do analysis? So I started to look for some communities that can help. And in the beginning of April, I joined Coronavy community. And this is just amazing community because I have more than 1,000 people with mostly artificial intelligence background. And they decided to build machine learning tools actually to help researchers to analyze all data that, for example, I already collected. So the first service that I've created for this community was, of course, Dataverse, because it was clear that they already have a lot of teams, and those teams, they're producing some data, and it was not clear how to manage all this data. Some people started to use Google Bucket, and some people just started to create Jupyter notebooks and to keep all data inside. So it was the first thing they started to use and share data. And now there is Dataverse running on datasets.coronavy.org, and it's working as kind of integration point for all teams and for individual contributors. So they're just basically archiving all their data and sharing these as groups using Dataverse. And well, I came even far. So I started to add some services to get data from Dataverse and to extract data points and actually to get possibility to get everything analyzed with Jupyter notebooks. And basically most of people, they're using this as Colab service. And also they're using PyDataverse that we created in our European Shock project. And this is how they're managing to analyze all data that we're collecting in like common data frame. And even more important, all people that are working on this analysis, they got acknowledgement. So in this example, you can see like a lot of people used to work on the same data set. So we are basically approaching everyone and they're just putting their names in this data set, which is nice. And this is something that can show to other people that they contributed to this work. And after we've got all processes established, I thought, well, it would be nice to follow like the same way like Google does. And with help of volunteers, I've created a client for Dataverse. And now we are just harvesting all data sets from internet, and we are trying to recognize COVID-19 related data sets. And basically, we are just collecting different data and we do verification of data. So we are trying to get everything in data frames. And if we can do that, we're extracting column names and variables and storing in Dataverse as part of metadata. And people became very interested. And after we actually enabled all previewers that were created also partly in our project, like spreadsheet viewer. So it was possible just to download dataset without actually, to open datasets to see content without actually download. And this is how we got all data reused. So they started to look for appropriate datasets, and they started to put links by APIs to their Jupyter notebooks. And because we already have almost 200,000 files, which is quite a lot, and it's not possible to do it just by hands. So we actually announced an internal challenge to build machine learning models for classification of all data sets they already harvested. So also, I've created a data management team. It's a small team with 5 people, and we started to do verification of all data that we have in dataset in Dataverse, because there is also a possibility that we'll just publish some datasets with sensitive information, these names, and you know, all this kind of stuff. So what we did actually, we started to approach data owners. For example, on GitHub, they have their data set. So we are just creating an issue and they're asking people to take responsibility. And surprisingly, in more than 20% of cases, they agreed and they're joining community and they're basically curating their own data set, which is quite a big surprise. And actually it's proved that this bottom-up data collection approach actually works. And a lot of people got inspired by this, and I've got approached by really a lot of different people from different countries, and now there is even discussion started with Sorbonne University, and they actually want to create COVID-19 museum based on the data that we already collected and add some extra layers like cultural analysis and economic and social. So thank you. And if you have some questions, I will be more than happy to answer.
Thank you, Slava. There is just a quick question. We'll just take one question to move on. Are you using any automated annotation tools?
Oh yeah, so for annotation, basically the whole idea to get it in Dataverse was to create automatic annotations. So Dataverse should be kind of middleware that should keep all steps, to keep all entities, and to have also human annotations, and after to learn something from it and produce machine learning models. So we have 2 annotation tools, Dakana and Hypothesis. And Hypothesis is basically where people providing statements evaluations, and Dakana allows to provide labeling, and those labeling can be used for training of machine learning models.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot, Slava. So we'll move on to Wendy 1. Wendy, you can now share your screen.
Thank you, Mercedes. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can see it. It's now it's in presenter mode.
Great, thank you.
That's great.
I'm really happy to have this opportunity to introduce the work done at the Center for Geographic Analysis, where I work, in gathering and producing geospatial data resources for COVID-19 research on the Dataverse platform. Everyone knows that data is essential in this COVID-19 research. And when we engage in a research project, oftentimes the challenge is, like Slava had explained, right? Data are scattered in different sources. They may not be comparable. They're not, easy to work with, and some of the sources may not be permanent, and so on. So our effort, the objective is to gather data from different sources and put them together. You know, after this, I'm going to reach out to Slava and see whether we could cooperate further and exchange. And then we also standardize it to make it comparable and match with geospatial entities. So that's the value added that we're doing. And then using Dataverse to publish it in a permanently archived platform in order to support long-term research. So what we do is that the bottom of the chart, there are multiple sources here, and we use APIs, scripts, you know, crawlers, and manual work to harvest, process, and integrate data, and then package it into different data sets, publish into Dataverse, and also make it available on the China Data Lab or Spatial Data Lab platform that we're building, which is a virtual desktop environment for analysis. The integration really is core for geospatial research, where the virus-related data comes in all kinds of measurement units. But our regular conventional data, like census data, economic data, right? Other data are baseline data, which comes from census units, administrative units, and so on. So making the two match is the essential. Otherwise, you're comparing apples with oranges, and it's very hard for individual researchers to all do that on their own. So that's our contribution, and make a standardization association, and then bring up all the baseline data with spatial variables, demographic, and so on for research. And here are the data sets that we created on Dataverse, organized under the resource for COVID-19 Dataverse. And there are many categories, including not just the case counts, but also mobility, health facilities, news and policy, published articles, weather data, social media data, and so on. And if you look at the start date column, we really started gather data very early in January. Because, you know, when you compare, you need to know what's before and what's after. And some of the data we went back to December last year, and updated weekly, some actually updated daily, for a temporal research. To access the data, you could enter it from Dataverse directly, or you could enter it from the China Data Lab website, and also we have news releases on regular updates. The data set, which includes 50 some data sets and 700 some files, have been downloaded 190,000 times up to yesterday. And the users includes researchers from 140 plus countries all over the world, pretty much. Now the leading two are the US and China researchers. So that is one part of our effort under the Spatial Data Lab or China Data Lab project. And we have also another project going on, which is harvesting geo-tweets. This is Twitter data with location tags. We've started doing that not for COVID-19, but for all kinds of research from 2010. So we have almost 10 years of data. These are all tweets with location, almost 10 billion of them, updated daily. And it's too big to store in Dataverse, the raw data set. We're storing it in Harvard's FASRC cluster. But the metadata is available from Dataverse. And we're extracting COVID-19 related subsets from this data set, and then publish it and sharing it out from Dataverse. Over there, you can see one example of how you could use this data set to instantly query billions of tweets going through any filter, location, time, keywords, and so on, and seeing the correlation between one variable versus the other, geographic distribution, temporal distribution, and so on. My colleague, Ben Lewis, I think is among the audience who probably could help me answer questions. And he will also mention this, I think, in tomorrow's geospatial data session. So if you have more questions, we could address them separately. And this is my last slide, which is an acknowledgement for the contributors and the sponsors for the work. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. This is excellent. And yeah, you mentioned the issue about also very large data sets that might not be able to be hosted in Dataverse, but there will be a session in this community meeting that will discuss these type of issues of how to support very large data sets with remote data, with remote storage. So do we have any questions for Wendy? Caitlin, any questions that you see coming?
No
so we'll
questions at this time.
So we'll move on to Toy. To share the screen, and there might be questions later that come for the Center Geographic Analysis.
All right, give me 1 second. All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share our work on the COVID-19 research at Population Council. If you are not familiar with the Population Council, we conduct biomedical and social science behavioral research across 50 countries. We have country offices in 14 countries, and the majority of our staff are based in lower middle income countries. So in March, we had to social distance, and there was a little bit of frustration from our country offices and myself to really think about there's a lot of data from Europe and China and the US, but there were not a lot of data from lower middle income countries, and our expertise is really thinking about vulnerable population, urban slums, and etc. So we kind of say, how do we leverage our data expertise, research expertise on data, primary data collection, as well as our relationship with policymaker on the ground to generate timely and policy relevant data to, one, help them understand the needs of the population, understand the knowledge, attitude, but also the impact that partial or full lockdown could have on vulnerable and poor population. We also conduct leveraging our expertise in economic, gender-based violence, marriage, family planning, reproductive health. We also conduct several rapid data analytics and review to translate lesson learned from other epidemics into COVID-19 for policymaker as well. And we also kind of have to navigate how we provide support to decision makers and organization on the ground. So for example, we establish cash transfer mechanism and evaluate them for Native American girls in the US, but also we're trying to provide technical assistance to other governments and NGOs in other countries as well. So coming from just in March, we now have about, I think this is now dated because I just came up our own COVID-19 research learning seminar, and we have about research in about 14 countries now on COVID-19. And for us, this is the primary survey. One of the strengths, I think, for the council was that we have these established primary data collection prospective cohort on the ground. So we were able, and in March, and I think until now, it was because of partial lockdown and social distancing, not a lot of people were able to collect data. And a lot of the data that came out on COVID was just more, it was not systematic, it's not rigorous. So we kind of really leveraged the phone number that we have from our existing cohort, and we create these 5 primary survey, and now what we call internally, they become our COVID-19 cohort. So for instance, in Kenya, we are working with informal settlement, interviewing both heads of household and adolescents, and now we're expanding that outside of Nairobi to 5 different sites, and we're on our 4th round of data collections. In Bangladesh, we have a cohort of about 1,000 adolescent girls and young women, and we also, with the emphasis of focusing on vulnerable community, and as you know, in the US, indigenous community have higher deaths than the general populations. So we also focus on indigenous community in Guatemala and Mexico's. And in India, we have been having a long-running cohort for 20 years. So we really leverage this adolescent and young people cohort to study them, the impact of COVID, and also knowledge and information in Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. And as you can see, there's a wide range of topics from family planning to gender implication, but also we also collaborate with the CDC and the London School of Hygiene to really look at social contact model. This is a huge gap in the modeling. It's most of the modeling data on COVID, it comes from China and the West. So we're starting to collect information in low middle income countries to kind of inform some of the modeling that is happening around the world. So that's kind of really interesting for us to you know, the opportunity we began with informing local decision maker, and now it become a growing body of research that we're able to collaborate with other people. Some of the you know, in the early days, not a lot of people had surveys tool that they could use. So we decided that we want to make everything transparent to facilitate open science across the kind of the community. So a lot of people kind of turn to us and say, do you have surveys? So we start putting up survey, but then we are so putting up like study protocol, because a lot of this is through mobile phone, and how do you ensure quality and etc., so that people can use our study protocol. We also share preliminary results in different format from research brief. For every data, we have a slide deck so that people can easily download PowerPoint so that they can use them to kind of inform their decisions. And our data set is still now available on request because they are part of a larger study, so that it takes us some time to merge all the variables with the larger larger data sets, so that you can, because for mobile phone, you can only collect so many variables, but then we have the rich data set in the background that we can combine for you if there's a question of interest. And some researchers have reached out, and we have been providing them with that sort of data set as well.
1 minute time.
Yeah, so this is just the number of downloads that we have. Beyond the data sharing, we have a number of policy publication, but also research publication as well. And, you know, we have seen that our data have been used in news, but also policy documents, just to kind of inform, just to influence discussion on the ground. You can search for our data sets on Dataverse, but also please get in contact with us. We have a digest that come out monthly. I just want to point out that in the spirit of open data, we also have the Adolescent Data Hub for those of you who are interested in adolescent research. And I just want to recognize our collaborators as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is a very interesting and important work that you do, the Population Council. Thanks a lot. don't know if we have questions at this point. We will have a discussion, a panel discussion later, so there might be questions that come in from all of you a little bit later. So we will now move on then to the panel, and I'll introduce the next speaker. So, sorry. Do you see my screen? No. Okay. So yes, it's an honor to introduce the three panelists for today's discussion on COVID-19 data sharing, how we can improve and standardize data sharing, and what are the recommendations that different groups provide. So first we'll start with Hilary Hanaho, the Secretary General of Research Data Alliance, our RDA, like most of us know the organization. Susan Gregurek, the Director of the Office of Data Science and Strategy, the National Institute for Health. Caroline Bakke and Sajid Balsari from Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. So we'll start with Hilary. The podium is yours. Or the share screen is yours. Reminder for all the audience that you can ask questions to the panelists in the Q&A using the Q&A tool.
Hey, thank you, Merce. Thank you so much. So good morning. I hope you can all hear me well. It's a great honor and a pleasure for me to speak on the panel, and more than anything really to have the opportunity to showcase the extraordinary work of the Research Data Alliance COVID Working Group. And thank you, Merce, for this very kind invitation. For those of you, just very briefly, if you're not familiar with the Research Data Alliance, it was launched in 2013 with the support of the National Science Foundation and the National Institute of Standards and Technology in the US, the European Commission and the Australian government. And its mission, as you can see, is to build the social and technical bridges that enable open sharing and reuse of data. And we have a rather ambitious vision that researchers and innovators will openly share data across technologies, disciplines, and countries to address the grand challenges of society. And I think the key words there are technologies, disciplines, and countries, because RDA is open to all scientific disciplines, it's open to all technological solutions, and it's global to all people from all over the world, data professionals and experts from across the globe. And what I'll talk to you today, in fact, is a very, very good example of that cross-disciplinary, multi-technology global effort. In fact, it's what I like to call community collaboration at its very best. We've almost 11,000 members now, individual members, and they primarily cooperate and collaborate through two main mechanisms, which are working and interest groups. And the numbers there on my slide show you how many of these we currently have running and the recommendations that we have so far. Today, though, I'd like to highlight the work of 9 different groups that came together under an overarching working group called the RDA COVID-19. And as we all know, under public health emergencies, and particularly the COVID pandemic, it's fundamental that the data is shared in a timely and accurate manner. But this needs to be coupled with the harmonization of diverse data infrastructures. And now, I suppose more than ever, it's imperative to share primarily the preliminary data and results early and often. We all recognize that open research data is a key component to pandemic preparedness and to response. And in late March, RDA received a direct request from one of our funders, the European Commission, to create these global guidelines and recommendations for data sharing under the COVID-19 circumstances. This is an unusual top-down action. RDA is very much a bottom-up community. But in response to this top-down call to action, we asked the RDA and broader community to respond, and they did in a pretty phenomenal and amazing way. Over 600 data professionals and domain experts signed up and began to work in April 2020. And they've produced a rich set of guidelines and recommendations. The guidelines, as you can see, are to focus to sort of help researchers and data stewards follow best practices to maximize the efficiency of their work and to act as a sort of a blueprint for future emergencies. And we hope that this output will actually do that, that it's not just for COVID-19, but also for future health emergencies. Also a set of recommendations to help policymakers and funders to maximize timely, quality data sharing and appropriate responses in such health emergencies. So this work, which was executed in a fairly intense period over 6 weeks with 600 people, all virtual, you can imagine, was a pretty Trojan effort. But I want to highlight that it was all conducted under the Research Data Alliance's guiding principles of openness, consensus, balance, harmonization, that it's community driven, and that it's non-for-profit and technology neutral. That means that everything that's done is open, you can access it, and I'll give you all the links later. So the work was divided into 4 research areas, if you like: clinical omics, epidemiology, and social sciences, with sort of 4 cross-cutting themes around community participation, indigenous data, legal and ethical considerations, and research software for data sharing. And this was the way we found the most efficient way to focus, I suppose, the conversations, the discussions, and work in synchronized, but to create one overarching set. And each of these 8, I suppose, groups have provided both recommendations and guidelines along the lines of what I spoke for before. So I'm just going to highlight a couple of the overarching challenges that came out as a result of the different 8 shall we say, activities that were then brought together. So, well, the unprecedented spread of the virus has prompted a rapid and massive research response with a diversity of outputs that pose, as we all know, a challenge to interoperability. So to make the most of those global research efforts, findings and data need to be shared equally rapidly, but in a way that is both useful and comprehensible. Yeah. The challenge here, of course, is the trade-off between timeliness and precision. The speed of data collection and sharing needs to be balanced with accuracy, which we know also takes time. But the lack of pre-approved data sharing agreements and, unfortunately, archaic information systems, they do hinder the rapid detection of emerging threats and the development of an evidence-based response. And sadly, while research and data are abundant, they're multifaceted and globally produced. We heard about all the data that's available. There's no universally adopted system or a standard for collecting or documenting and disseminating the research outputs, particularly around COVID-19. Furthermore, other challenges were around the fact that many outputs aren't actually reusable or useful to different communities if they haven't been sufficiently contextualized, documented, or even appropriately licensed. And research software is developed and maintained often in an ad hoc fashion, and access to the research to software developed for analysis in papers isn't always consistently placed in the papers, and if they are available, often they're placed in arbitrary locations with no guarantee of their persistence. So there's a rather long list there, as you see, of the overarching recommendations. I'm not going to go through them all. I'm going to highlight a couple of them for you. The governments, funders, research funders, and research supporting institutions around the world must coordinate with one another and support and promote open science, of course, for all this to work, through policy and investment to streamline the flow of data between local entities and, of course, across international jurisdictions, which is difficult. We're all aware, of course, of the importance of FAIR, but we do need to be very careful to achieve a balance between perfectly fair outputs and timely sharing, clearly with the key goal that immediate and open sharing is the key driver here. One of the other recommendations that came out was, of course, all around the ethical and privacy considerations. They're significant. I mean, around the patient, participant and patient data are significant in this crisis, and practically all the different areas that were looked at in this noted the need to find a balance that takes into account individual, community and societal interests and benefits, while at the same time addressing these public health concerns and objectives. The next two slides I'll go very quickly through actually highlight the challenges. One challenge, the main challenge, the guideline and recommendation that each of the groups wished to, shall we say, put up top of the document. I'll just take one on each slide. The first one I'll take here is on the epidemiological data. So as you can see, one of the challenges that the epidemiological data group came out with was that data and models are frequently incomplete, they're provisional, and they're subject to correction under changing conditions. So for example, their guideline to the researchers would be that data models should include clinical data, disease milestones, indicators and reporting data, as well as contact tracing and personal risk factors. And then we were very fortunate to have Indigenous data. Of course, we have an Indigenous data group in RDA. We have an alliance together and a cooperation with the the Global Indigenous Data Alliance. And their recommendation, of course, is that Indigenous data rights, priorities and interests must be recognized in all COVID-19 research and surveillance activities. And of course, I'm interested with my previous speaker who mentioned, of course, the Indigenous data aspects of their work in the Population Council as well. So of course, there are too many areas to highlight from the document. There really are very, very many. It's a very long document, if any of you have accessed it. We have gone through 5 iterations of the document. You can access all 5 of them at that DOI there. The final version will now be published on the 30th of June. It's ongoing an internal RDA procedure for endorsement. It will be, well, it is already accompanied by a Zotero collection for the references and the resources that were used in the document by all the groups. And I want to note that as all of our outputs in RDA, everything we have is open. It's all put out for public comment, and those 5 releases have been iterated based on the feedback that we've received, yes. Some of the groups, as they did some really phenomenal work, are producing other supporting outputs, and further other tools and things will be available at a later stage. But with that, I'll finish, and I will look forward to any questions and to the discussion on the panel later. And thank you so much for your attention. And if you want to contact me, my details are there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hilary, and thanks for the impressive work that RDA has done in a relatively short amount of time, right? And you put a lot of work together from this working group. So we're going to hold on questions until the end of the panelist presentation. So now we're going to switch to Susan. Susan, welcome. You can share your screen.
Thank you. I would be delighted to. Sorry, I need to go up here. All right. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, we can. That's great. And we hear you well. And reminder to the attendees that can ask questions through Q&A, and some are asking questions through the chat too, but thanks.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to participate in this really important and exciting panel to address a global pandemic. I'm coming to you virtually from Baha'i Honda State Park, but in reality from my home in Silver Spring, Maryland. So, as you know, there is an enormous amount of data that is being captured currently in the electronic healthcare record systems throughout all of our countries, through our clinical trial networks here in the US and elsewhere, and through other activities at institutions, at medical centers, in local healthcare provider situations. And all of this can be used to treat COVID-19. These data have the potential to elucidate the natural history of the disease right now in its acute phase, but also as it moves into chronic sequelescence. These data become an enabler for randomized clinical trials and understanding therapeutics as they are given in real time. And also, as we've heard, these data can elucidate and mitigate COVID-19 related variances due to race or ethnicity, due to sex and gender or age, or even geographic region or insurance status. And this is something that is a goal for NIH currently. As was just mentioned earlier in the panel, this pandemic is an equal opportunity pandemic hitting all of us, but some of us it hits quite harder. Our Native American populations, our rural populations, and our African American and other populations. And this is something that NIH certainly would like to address head on. You probably have heard about our Rapid Acceleration of Diagnostics, RADx. NIH received over $1 billion to help in a number of areas. So I just want to go over a few of these right now. There's the RADTech, the highly competitive, rapid, three-phase Shark Tank-like activity to identify the best cases for at-home point-of-care testing. These could be devices, these could be mobile apps, many options. We also have an initiative for $500 million to understand underserved populations, linking communities based on testing in their communities for our most vulnerable populations. We have a program where we'd like to develop new and novel, non-traditional approaches, new applications, new technologies for testing. This is called Radical. It's just launching this month, and $200 million for this. RAD-ATP, rapid scale-up of advanced technologies to really move these technologies to the ultimate phase of delivery to patients and citizens, our RAD-ATP program. And finally, data management to support all of these different types of technologies and point of care and testing to build an infrastructure for data to support the various different data management needs for the RAD activities. I want to point out a webpage that would list all of our activities and all of our funding opportunities related to COVID-19. You'll see it down there linked on the bottom. I'm going to go through just a few of our activities right now that are available for researchers, and all of them can be found from our resource page. If you have an idea, if you want to develop a new device or you have an algorithm, we would like to hear from you. You'll see that on the third bullet, it says scientists and organizations can submit COVID-19 assets and candidates to a portal. That is the portal. If you link on it, you can submit your ideas and it will be reviewed at NIH, and then you'll be put in contact with the relevant person for your ideas. So that is a way that we would like to gather all of your ideas in a consistent and coherent way. The first activity I want to talk about is COVID-19. This launched quite early on in the COVID-19 pandemic. It's a public-private partnership between the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, the Allen Institute, Microsoft, our National Library of Medicines, and CSET. And here, the idea is to collect data sets from all of the COVID-19 research-related publications from, for example, NLM's PubMed Central, to provide these in an open access compendium where all of the publication metadata is harmonized and then parsed into a set that can be then downloaded for AI algorithms. So far, and there's a recent publication on this, so far 75,000 downloads have been enabled from this particular core set of data from publications. So I think that this might be very helpful for researchers as they're developing AI text mining algorithms and other algorithms. Another activity that I want to just briefly mention is something that has launched just last month. It's called the National COVID Cohort Collaborative, N3C, providing a secure data enclave for a limited data set pool from COVID-19 patients from a large number of clinical and translational science awards, the CTSAs, that are supported both by NCATS and NIGMS. These data sets are being provided in a secure enclave and platform which will support both clinical data, laboratory data, diagnostic data, and other data such as imaging data, which I will describe in a minute. We're using fast healthcare interoperable resources to map all of these different data from I2B2, from PCORNet, from Trinetics into one common data model. And here we're using OMAP 5.3. Researchers can gain access to this data shortly. In addition, just yesterday, we announced that the All of Us will expand their data collection to address COVID-19 in 3 particular areas in antibody testing. And this is in partnership with NCI's Frederick National Laboratory to provide the data in a de-identified way from antibody testing. We're also expanding our COVID-19 experience survey so that we can gain an understanding of how our patient participants are dealing with and handling COVID-19. And finally, there will be a limited data pool from electronic healthcare record data from the All of Us program, and it will be provided in a federated enclave that will connect to this N3C activity so that researchers have a larger network of data across the clinical trial networks that NIH is supporting. So I did mention that we are collecting a number of imaging data. This is a particular repository that we have stood up. It's a digital pathology repository. Here we are collecting clinical and imaging data from patients who are COVID positives, as well as other patients who have MERS, SARS, and H1N1. We've leveraged an existing industry platform called Halo, which is supported through our office. And we are linking this particular data set with the N3C analytics platform. This should be stood up fairly soon. So researchers will have not only those limited data pools from electronic healthcare records and health cases, but also these imaging data as well. And finally, I want to point out that if you are interested in learning about all of the open access data and computational resources that are supported by NIH and within public consortium and or private entities that are available for researchers, we do have a listing page. Highlighted on this page is a webinar that we're so grateful that Harvard Dataverse was able to participate in that discusses all the data sharing and discovery activities that support COVID-19 in our generalist repositories. And with that, I just want to thank Marseille and all of the panelists for giving us the opportunity to tell you just a small snapshot of the many activities that we are doing COVID-19. And I hope that you will continue to watch what NIH does as we make more data available to researchers. And with that, I can stop sharing and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Susan. Great to see the many resources that you are providing for all of us. And yeah, we're holding the questions to have the discussion at the end. So we're going to switch now to Caroline and Sajid. I don't know who's presenting or who will be talking. Okay, Caroline, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. So I'm speaking here as from a slightly different perspective. I'm an infectious disease epidemiologist. And I've been involved in the COVID response since the beginning. And I think it's really important to emphasize that all of these data sets that we've been talking about and the importance of using them for inference and public health is predicated on the idea that we can trust the epidemiological data. So, you know, when we use all of these different data sets and put them online, I think that one of the most important things to remember is that the number of cases is still completely unknown. So all of the metadata in the world is not going to make up for the fact that testing capacity largely determines how many cases you think you have in any place. And so that really limits the extent to which we can use artificial intelligence or machine learning or even models to make sense of the situation and design effective policy. And I think that epidemiological data is not like other kinds of data in many ways, and especially for an emerging pandemic when we don't have diagnostics. And I think it's great that we're going to be moving towards point of care diagnostics. One of the reasons that we need that is because we still have no idea how many cases there actually are. We can start to get a handle on that with antibody testing to try and look at seroprevalence. But until that time, I think, throwing computational power at data when the data quality itself is so low in many parts of the world, including in the US. We suffer a real problem there with our inference tools and our ability to make sense of it. So when we're trying to ground truth anything, it's really hard in the absence of better test data. And I think that when people come from a data science background or from other fields, sometimes they are frankly appalled at the quality of the epidemiological data, and that's just a reality for people that work in infectious disease epidemiology, especially in low and middle income countries, but also in the US and in high income countries. We're dealing with this pervasive problem. So what I would say is that the approach that we've been taking is to try to understand the human behavioral response to policies intended to slow down COVID-19. So my group, and together with Sachet Balsari, who's going to speak in a minute, we've been using data from mobile phones to understand population mobility for several years in the context of epidemic forecasting. And when COVID-19 happened, of course, there became an urgent need to use this kind of information to monitor social distancing interventions on a scale that we've never before seen anywhere in the world. So the importance of this data has now, I think, come to light, and we will expect location data from mobile phones to be part of a public health data system moving forward. And so the way that we have been working has always been through DUAs with data providers and using many of the frameworks that have been developed around aggregation to prevent re-identification of individuals with strict data privacy rules in place before we analyze that data and share it with policymakers. And I would be interested in the discussion with this community in particular, because I think that we are seeing many data providers starting to bypass some of those frameworks in the absence of really robust legal and regulatory mechanisms to monitor this kind of information. And we're seeing a blurring of the lines between public health surveillance and state surveillance. And that is extremely problematic from a data standardization and utilization standpoint, and how we think about the use of data, the sharing of data, who do we share it with and for what purpose. And so I think this is a really important conversation to have. And so as I explained the approach that we've been taking, I think it's important to keeping that in mind, that there's a reason that we have a slightly bulky way of managing the data, but that reflects these important privacy concerns and a data protection viewpoint. So when COVID-19 happened, we pulled together a large network of about 50 to 60 researchers around the world. And we are working together with a specific goal of taking in data on mobility, these large data sets. So we have data providers from mobile phone operators, Facebook, ad tech data, Mapbox, Cubic, these kinds of companies. And everyone in our network signs individual DUAs through their institution. And then as a group, we are working to develop standardized approaches to aggregating and analyzing that data. And then we partner with specific decision makers in departments of public health to provide them with daily situation reports about what's going on in their communities around social distancing. And the advantage of that is not only that it gets the data to the people that need to see it while preserving privacy and all of those things, but also that it provides an interpretive layer. One of the things about these mobility data is that they're not straightforward to understand, and they aren't obviously related to the epidemiology in a very direct way. So you do have to you need interpretation, and it needs to be contextual. So a given percentage drop in mobility in New York means something very different than a given percentage mobility drop in Atlanta, say. And so you need these iterative feedback loops between researchers that have access to the data and understand the aggregation, and the policymakers that need to know a specific thing for the COVID response about how people are moving around. So I'm going to share just some screenshots to try to explain what we've been doing, and then I'm going to pass it over to Sachet. Sorry. Here we go. Okay, so this is our website, and it's a pretty basic website, but it describes what we do. And I think here, you know, we've just put up this warning, this very, very strong statement about not sharing these kinds of data and this approach with state surveillance efforts. And that's an important premise right up front. We link to the Facebook dashboard. So this is a dashboard from Facebook users on their mobile phones. You can zoom in and out. You can look at different counties and how mobility has changed over time. You can look at different metrics of mobility. Here's just in Texas, and you can see that people did move less, and now we're nearly up to baseline levels. Again, we've worked with Facebook for 2 years now to try to make sure that these data are actually meaningful and quality. So one of the problems, things like the baselines, things like aggregation, things like uncertainty and noise, these are not totally trivial. Just because there's a lot of data, it doesn't mean that it's actually telling you anything meaningful. And we've been really working hard to get these metrics to mean something, which is helpful. And then I'm just going to show you some examples of the situation reports that we've been putting out. So this is one from Chile. This is Santiago. At showing the devices in different places and changes in particular neighborhoods and movement. And you can see in Santiago in Chile, they had an interesting social distancing interventions that was turned on and off, and you can see weekend effects and so on. This is the situation report for one of the days in Colorado. So the reason I'm showing you these different ones is to explain that there are many, many dashboards out there that are kind of generalizable everywhere, and you know, the Google has a dashboard and so on. But what we found is that policymakers need something very specific that is tailored to their needs and what they need to know. And so again, working in this very specific way to produce situation reports that are useful for particular people has been very important. Here's just one for the UK, looking at between city travel, within city travel, and so on. And so I will pass this over to Sachet now, but I'm happy to answer any questions more generally. I think this data pipeline, taking these large complex data sets, but with this important filter of expertise and privacy before it goes to policymakers, is quite important. And I think some of the dashboard approaches that we are seeing lose that important filter. So there will be a lot of conversations about data privacy that we need to have, and what legislation needs to be put in place to protect people. And that's going to be a really important part of this moving forward. Sachet, I will pass it to you. You're muted.
In the interest of collective time, I'll just make a couple of remarks of sort of where next, right? A lot of these data are now going to be part of our built environment, and they won't be relative, they won't be important just for COVID, but for disasters, for foreseeable disasters in the next few years. Including this summer with hurricanes and cyclone season already starting, and then within the US, the wildfires in California just around the corner. What we've sort of realized, and Hillary alluded to this a little bit as well, is there are sort of three aspects to this, right? There's the data readiness piece, saying where are the data, and multiple efforts that have been presented this morning all sort of speak to that. You know, you have to get these data, clean them, get them ready, and have them accessible. And a huge part of that is also this pre-negotiation, especially with these novel data streams that we're talking about. You know, how do you talk to these technology companies, especially if we think that there needs to be a framework where we're not spending millions of dollars buying these kinds of data, but having an agreement with technology companies that the spigot turns on to researchers and policymakers in times of crises. These conversations need to be had beforehand, as many of us in this conference realize that sometimes these negotiations with the DUA is a drag on for 6, 8, 9, 10 months, and that's really the complete wrong approach, in the middle of a disaster. So the data readiness piece is one. The second is the methods readiness piece, which Caroline spoke about, and so I'll sort of move on to the next, right? It's you need to know how to be able to combine these various data streams, some of which are very novel and come with their own biases as well, right? So the mobility data that we speak to, who are the people that have T-Mobile subscriptions, and who are you including and who are you excluding? And so what do you risk when you use Facebook data in India? You're probably not capturing the 100 million migrants that were stranded, and so on, and sort of the method readiness piece around it. And the most challenging piece of these two, as if they were not hard enough, is the translational readiness. We might provide the best data we have, but we have found that policymakers and governments from the US to the developing world are not necessarily in a position where they are able to, either they don't have the bandwidth to filter the noise that comes their way when every consulting company is presenting them with a dashboard, or sometimes there just is not the expertise required to understand, analyze, interpret, and then translate this data into actionable policy. And we face this a lot in low and middle income countries. So where this group is now going is launching an interdisciplinary initiative that will look at data readiness, method readiness, and translational readiness, starting with very specific projects, regions, and countries, to try and wrap our head around how do we do this better by pre-negotiating some of this work and front-loading it before disasters unfold. And the first couple of places that we're going to look at are in California, with the California Department of Public Health, and likely in Bangladesh. I'll pause there in the interest of time and then answer more questions during the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caroline and Sajid. To hear the research perspective is extremely important in this community, because after all, we do all this to advance research, and if what we provide is not data that has no good quality, the remarks that Caroline made, I found that extremely important, the same with Sajid. So all these need to be considerations, because if it doesn't help to improve science and improve research, we're misleading with what we share, right? So just first, well, again, a warm and a really huge thanks to the four panelists, the three perspectives. They're very important. Each one is very important. We're going to go through a few questions. I also have questions for the panelists, but first let's go through a couple of questions that we have from the audience. Caitlin, would you like to ask them?
Yeah, sure. Susan was going to live answer a question for us from Bonnie. Do you include the Elsevier open publications in your data sets? And if not, do you look at overlap?
Thank you so much, Bonnie. Indeed, we do include the Elsevier publications as well as Springer Nature publications. All of these publications are made available under a special COVID-19 open access license. And so we retrieve these publications either from PubMed Central, bioRxiv, medRxiv, or from the publishers. Now, we look for keywords in the title or the abstract or the full text that relate to the words COVID-19, COVID virus, or 2019 COVID, for example. And then those are pulled into this data set that are then harmonized by the Allen Institute and made available for AI researchers. I think this is an ongoing project, and so we're collecting more and more publications, and hopefully the research community finds these helpful.
Thank you. I think that was the main question. There were a couple of other minor questions, one for Slava with respect to annotation tools.
I think we answered, that was covered. Yeah, and there is another one in in
I might have missed
chat.
one in chat. Let's see.
So I'll just read it from Paul Boone. We all fear a second wave of COVID-19, and also let me point out that the US seems to be still in the first wave, right? As I understand it. So, but a second wave that could be coming. So using all the data that maybe the mobile data, the social media data, would it be possible to predict a new outbreak hotspot in a few weeks in advance? I don't know if Caroline, you want to answer this?
So what I would say is, as you point out, Merce, in the US and in some other countries, I mean, waves imply troughs, and we haven't seen a trough. We've seen ongoing surges of cases. I think, so the problem with forecasting really comes down to the problem of understanding how many cases you have in order to predict how many cases you will have. We have other sources of epidemiological information to improve forecasts, things like hospitalization rates with COVID-19 and death rates with COVID-19. And we can use those to improve our forecasts and back calculate how many cases must have led to those. The problem is that they are a lagged indicator. So, you know, you see the hospitalizations are rising from cases that happened 2 weeks ago, and deaths, you know, happen, you know, 3 weeks after infection. So in terms of the time scale of your forecast, they can be useful, but they're not as close to a real-time indicator as we would like. We can use these other indicators like mobility and so forth to improve our understanding of what might be happening in community transmission. And I think we heard before that the contact rates are really what's driving any forecast that's mechanistic anyway. Understanding contact rates and how they've changed due to social distancing and people's fear and whatever else is hard. And of course we can use proxies for that, like Twitter, sentiment analysis and so on. They're all quite approximate, and there will be large uncertainty associated with forecasts, but I think 2 weeks out is fairly reasonable. I think it's much harder to say when will the highest peak happen, or what should we expect in the winter, because so much depends on human behavior and what's happening in the meantime. But for short-term forecasts, you can often use just even statistical approaches that don't rely on mechanism. And on that short time scale, those can be quite effective.
Thank you. Maybe as a follow-up of these, well, a question for you, Caroline, but also the others might have something to add. So we talked, well, from Hillary, for example, described some of the recommendations that included a standardization. So I wonder if we have a problem already of data quality and not having the sufficient test to have an accurate number or trusted number of cases. Should we think of standardization in the testing? Would a standardization make sense? Is it at what levels, right? Because it would be great that we are counting this. We're talking about this. We know we're talking about the same thing when we compare data from one country to another, from one state to another, and what are the variables of how we get how we're collecting the data. But also we might need something even before that, before collecting the data. So what are your thoughts on that? And is it possible to maybe not arrive to there now very soon, but be ready for other pandemics or by some kind of regulation or standardization? I don't know, Caroline or Sajid, if you want to take that first, and
well,
if you're able to learn also from RDA.
I could give a clinical example of sort of just how deep this problem is. So true story, at a hospital, when COVID started, for the first week, there were no tests. When the test kits arrived, we started putting out big tents and started screening everyone that had what we thought were COVID symptoms. 2 weeks later, ran out of equipment. And so decided not to test anyone with symptoms, but assume that everyone with symptoms had tests, and only test people that were very sick and getting admitted to the hospital to make sure that they had COVID and you were not missing another diagnosis. A week later, there were more tests, and so we started doing drive-through testings. A week later, there were some more tests, and the hospital started making their own test kits. So there were no more delays. There were 4 or 5 day delays until then. And so people were just held in the waiting room and tested. And this goes on and on and on. Here we are in mid-June, and the testing criteria changed this morning. While we were testing only the very sick people getting admitted to the hospital who may or may not have had some kind of known exposure, as of this morning, everyone getting to the hospital gets tested. This is at a Harvard hospital in Boston. So can you imagine sort of what happens at institutions where folks don't even have the bandwidth and the luxury and resources to think about these things? The denominator kept changing constantly. And this is what Caroline is alluding to, saying we have no idea what we're talking about when we talk about these tests, right? So the need to standardize even the reporting systems, when you say when a country or a neighborhood or a hospital reports that they are testing, you know, the very first distinction between a virological and serological test, which even the CDC then do for a short period of time, but then what these virological tests actually mean and who the denominator is needs to be standardized. There has to be a taxonomy around it. And, you know, folks are working on it, but as we all recognize, to push this as an internationally accepted standard is Herculean. And in the absence of it, we're just working with the really bad quality data. Over to Caroline. Yeah.
I was just going to say that I think that even databases that track testing criteria, in addition, you know, testing criteria and testing capacity and test positivity rates and, you know, as much other information as you can get is going to help you inform your estimate. The test you're using, so we need to know test sensitivity and specificity, how many false negatives are you getting, and then who is getting tested, who is not, and how that changes over time. And again, this speaks to aggregation too, Marseille. So when we're talking about putting data sets online, you want to make sure that you're not aggregating so much that you lose the nuances of what the testing criteria was among, you know, if you've got 10 different hospitals and they all have completely different testing criteria, then for a policymaker, you need to keep those disaggregated so you can look at temporal changes within one testing criteria or, you know, things like that. So there is a role for standardization in the sense that at least this should be recorded, so that you can do your best to adjust for variation in time and by institution in terms of who's getting a test.
Marseille, I just want to...
Go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry, yeah.
Can I just add real quick?
Yes,
we're about to share the results and the data behind this, but we're doing an kind of a data review of all the states and some major city and jurisdiction in the United States on data reporting as on equity indicators, so like age, race, ethnicity, and it's very poor. You know, there's no standardization in the US, and I think just to really understand, I mean, yeah, race is an issue, but race, education, race and economic indicators are very important to make decisions on where to test and how to allocate resources. And I feel like even just HMIS data, Health Management Information System in the US is not standardized. And I think there's a huge opportunity for the data community to push for some of this standardized reporting. And that would help with modeling, that would help with identify hotspot, future vaccine distribution. There won't be enough vaccine when it's available. And then on the, I work internationally, so I just want to make a case for international perspective is that also need to happen, but they don't have the resources. But I think what donors have failed to invest in is prospective cohort collaboration, not just an epi cohort, but a cohort where we collect different type of data. And it's, I think, preparing for future epidemic. That's where we can study like the outbreak in Wuhan, there might be an outbreak in Liberia. You know, there's similar to Ebola. If we were having this cohort around Africa, we can quickly mobilize using existing data, collecting this sort of data to kind of help manage the epidemic much more quickly.
Yeah, very good point. Thanks for bringing this up. I don't know if others
Yes, if I
Susan or
could.
Flori, you want to add it to that? But if not,
Yeah,
I'll
just a quick thing, because interestingly, you know, one of the challenges that I highlighted when at the beginning was this fact that there was no universally adopted system or standard, yeah, for collecting the data. But interestingly, it's not one of the overarching recommendations, because but it is a recommendation individually from each of at least 4 of the different, you know, areas. So for clinical data, for, I think it's the epidemiology. But I think that brings you back to the point, like Caroline was saying, about, you know, the quality of the data, even within a particular domain and area. So you already have that challenge. And then on top of that, if you want, it's not just, you know, it's an aggregation of many, many types of data. But I think I mean, it came out very strongly from the experts and the domain experts in this group that there's certainly, you know, there's a huge road that we need to travel for the standardization, but we should be able to do it much quicker, you know, than previous things. And if everybody's, and with all these activities that are going on and initiatives and the funded and unfunded things, surely we can get there, you know. But it is a long road, I think, unfortunately.
Yeah, thanks. And the RDA plays an important role in helping move this along, at least organizing the communities that it can help with. So I think my answer some of the questions. I always have questions, so I have follow-up questions, but I know we have some from the attendees too.
No, we have a few in the Q&A.
Some might have been answered already.
Yeah, I think some, yeah. Okay, so one question we have in the Q&A, we hear a lot about poor data quality today. Any thoughts on how data repositories such as Dataverse can indicate on a dataset landing page if a dataset is of high quality? So that sort of speaks to how we might indicate in our repositories different levels of quality.
Thoughts?
I can speak on to the mobility data. We've had a lot of problems with this. If you're working with private company data, we think that it's important that they provide estimates of uncertainty and representativeness in a standardized way so that we can compare between different data providers, for example. It's very hard to negotiate those kinds of estimates because you run into you know, the sort of competitive landscape of corporate interests. But I do think, so I'm not exactly sure how you would do it, but I do think that it would be really great if there could be some independent way to estimate uncertainty. And maybe Wendy can speak to this, especially for spatial data sets. If you're looking at, you know, some administrative unit that you've put in a bunch of different data layers on, and you want to think about those different data layers, you know, a way to weight certainty or quality of those data layers, preferably quantitatively, but if not, at least some indication. I think that would be great. I don't know exactly how you would do it. I thought maybe Wendy would have some ideas.
Thanks, Caroline. I think that the spatial visualization could highlight some outliers. That would be kind of a either visual or programmatic check on identifying anomaly in your data sets. But really, the actual quality of the data, sometimes even anomaly may not be poor quality. It might be for a good reason. So it is not something that you could blanketly apply an algorithm and solve. So what I would say, I entered it in the answer, question and answer section, saying that what we've experienced in WorldMap is a spatial data sharing platform are two sides. One is user crowdsourced commenting and rating on data. Like as user use it, they may identify problems and they can give feedbacks, and the platform can capture that. And the other one is organization certification. meaning that if it's my data and our professionals put in the time to check, I publish it and it's marked with my organization's certification per se. Therefore, it's more responsible than any unknown user who had uploaded and shared it out. So those are the two ways that we've applied taking the responsibility away from the platform developer and put it on the users. One is authorized organization, the other is crowdsourced user.
Very, very good point. And this community has also a large number of data curators and those who could also validate that and stamp the data set for higher quality. Yes, Lava, I see that you want to.
So I wanted to add that for me and for community where I'm involved, it's very important to get really transparent provenance information. So we should understand from where these data are coming and who was involved in the process. And all this information is much more important than completeness, to be honest. Because there are some publications and, you know, there are a lot of cases and publications got retracted because there are not reliable data. And this is basically a problem for any kind of research.
Yeah, very good point too. And provenance is also an important part of what Dataverse wants to focus on or has been focusing on. And I also am hoping that from Susan's perspective and NIH and other funding agencies, the importance of, like you mentioned, about data management support might help also with some providing more funding for helping the providing provenance information and better curation of the data, or at least reviews of qualities. So I think we'll just have a couple more questions and wrap up for this part of today's community meeting.
Okay, well, we have a related question with respect to kind of helping with standardization of this data. And the question is, are any of the panelists exploring the application of any specific ontologies to this data to help with standardization of metadata? So essentially, you know, what other kinds of infrastructure and tools and so forth are folks using to help standardize this kind of scruffy data?
Well, probably I can respond to this because I'm involved in coronavirus community, and basically we started with COVID-19 collection. So we are getting all updates from Kaggle, and we managed to build natural language processing pipeline that does automatically all extraction of medical ontologies like UMLS, and we are getting these in like 24 hours ready. And there are a lot of different ontologies, of course, and different entities. But from other side, we have ontology called biological expression language. And this is something open. And we're trying to map, for example, UMLS to this language. And it has proper ontology, and we can build a graph, basically, with all sequences and proteins. And this is our way how we are getting to bioinformatics in this respect.
If I could also contribute both what we're doing and then a plea for help. First, we are trying to work with the community to define a COVID phenotype, and the common data elements, which is our clinical ontology for mapping all of these different type of data to make them more harmonizable. As you saw in the presentation, we'll have a number of testing, point of care testing, mobile app testing, all of that data we will like to make available in a DM identified way to researchers. We're going to have to struggle with the ontologies for that testing data. And I think that we do need help from the community on those very particular, all the different types of testing data that are going to come out that have been talked about. I don't think there are strong ontologies at the moment that we can map to.
So thanks, Susan. And looking at the time, I need to wrap up. I just would like to give the opportunity, though, to each one of the panelists, the presenters, just 10, 15 seconds if you can, but just the one thing you would say that that is more important moving forward in terms of what we can do better. and I know that in some ways you've said it in different ways, but if you could just summarize briefly what do you think that how we can help and what we can do better. Hilary, do you want to start?
Well, I think I said it, but I'm going to say it again. I think it's timeliness versus precision. So the accuracy, but also if the time, the response. So we can't be slow. We can't wait, as Caroline said, for the long agreements. So quick but accurate.
Sorry, Wendy, do you want to?
Can I say two rather than one? I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'll be really quick. I think from the platform point of view, interoperability is my #1 concern because no platform can do everything and host everything. So building bridges and make it seamlessly connectable. That's one area. And from the data point of view, my point is privacy, data security, and privacy control is a functionality that we need a lot. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Wendy. Slava?
Yeah.
2 seconds.
Yeah, I think one of key issues to solve these problems is to approach researchers and actually ask them to contribute and ask them to create right metadata descriptions and data descriptions. So this is just essential to do it bottom up. This is my opinion, because it's not possible just to do top down in this kind of situations. It's too slow and too inefficient.
Okay, good point. Good point. Try.
Yeah, I think with the 2 retraction from the Lancet and Nature recently, I think it's back for open data, and I think researchers need to be really honest on like their involvement in data and how much they know about the data. So that's one of the reasons why I hesitate to share our data, because I want them to work with our data team if they want the data to do further analysis.
Thanks for bringing this up. That was a very important thing that happened recently. Caroline?
Well, I think all good points so far. I think my biggest thing is that we should always keep in mind not only where the data is coming from, but what we're trying to do with it. What is the question and who needs to know the answer? Because I think that often we collect data without keeping that in mind. And so what are we trying to achieve? And that should in turn guide, a lot of the privacy conversations about what we're willing to tolerate, as well as what the kind of analysis you can do is as well.
Thank you. Thank you. You're right. Susan?
Thank you. All good points, which I agree with, and echoing a bit of Wendy's comment from our recent workshop on the idea of co-opetition between our repositories. Now more than ever important to share that data in a way that makes it findable and searchable and aggregatable for researchers in the workspaces and platforms that they wish to work on. I agree, there is no one solution that's going to fit all of these different use cases that Caroline mentions. So we're going to have to work together in very novel and creative ways, and unfortunately fairly quickly.
Thank you. Thanks. Sajid, if you're still with us, you want to say the last word? A lot of pressure the last part of the session.
Yes, like, wait, you said everything I wanted to. I want to underscore the transparency part. I think we just tend to lose if we're untransparent about methodology and the limitations of our data. And we're just doing a very bad job at it, both in high and low and middle income countries as well. So it would really be good, especially in the throes of a pandemic like this, if people are brutally honest about the limitations of their data.
Great. It's a great way of finalizing, and responsible transparency is what we're about. So thanks again, everybody. I really enjoyed that very much. I hope that everybody in well, all the attendees also enjoyed it very much. And thanks to all the people that joined us today that we didn't see your faces, but we saw your names and we felt you were here in the room. Thank you.
All right, folks. Welcome back to Dataverse 2020. Can everybody hear me okay? And can everybody see a blue slide?
We can, yes.
All right, awesome. So for those who don't know me, hopefully most people here know me. Danny Brooke. I work in product development at IQSS, mostly on the Dataverse Project. And so I am the one who drew the short straw, and I have to go after that wonderful morning session. But I'm going to try to give you all a update on some of the stuff that we've worked on over the last year, and also some of the cool stuff that's coming in the next year. So I'm going to start my video, and you can see that I'm coming to you live from the Sci Auditorium. What I want to talk about today are just, a reiteration of the strategic goals of the project. And, if you've seen me present similar to this in previous years, you've seen these strategic goals talked about. But it's always good to reorient ourselves around those strategic goals and the purpose of Dataverse. I'm going to talk about some of the features released over the last year. And then I'm going to talk about some of the cool stuff that's coming up. And of course, the reason we have this community meeting is to work with the community to, help us define what those things are going to be. And so I'll be talking about some specific opportunities to get involved over the next couple of days. And then just, a reminder about the community and how we work together and how to get involved at a couple different levels in the development of Dataverse. So Dataverse was, of course, born from the Institute for Quantitative Social Science. And the reason IQSS exists is to enable better, bigger, faster, and more collaborative science. And historically, Dataverse has been focused on the better science piece, where people making their data and code available for inspection allows reproducibility, and then better science is, and then reproducible science is better science. And the Dataverse is also focused on the more collaborative science piece of this statement, where making your data available allows others to build upon that data. But in recent years and in the next year, we'll be moving towards bigger data and faster data. Bigger data, I'll talk about quite a bit, and the features added to the product over the last year and that will add to the coming year to support large data sets, and faster data, allowing things like compute and access to reproducibility tools. So kind of one level lower than that in how we plan and what guides us as we as a community build Dataverse is around the strategic goals. So increasing adoption, I mean, every year we hear about adoption from Mercé, and we hear about the metrics about how the project is growing in a lot of different ways. So we're now up to 60 installations worldwide, and we'll continue to see that number grow. Large data, sensitive data, streaming data. We focused a lot on large data. In the coming year, we'll be focusing on sensitive data a lot. Over the last year, there's been really great stuff coming out of places like Texas Digital Library. There's been a lot of great discussions at Scholars Portal about Globus, and then also ODM is continuing to work on the Trusted Remote Storage Agent. So a lot of really, really cool opportunities around large data in the community. Data and metadata features. I'll talk a little bit about variable metadata export and editing variable metadata, and HTML codebooks that are now available in Dataverse. So we're definitely seeing a lot of expansion around those features. And then for preservation and archival features, last year we talked about how there were integrations with Baggett exporting to Chronopolis, and integrations with Archivematica And, you know, in the future, we're seeing some work supported by RDA about integrations between Dataverse and Clouder and standardization in that area. And so in interoperability, you know, definitely one of our strategic goals, and we heard a lot about the challenges around interoperability this morning. And then in one of Mercedes' presentations, she says that the interoperable principles are more difficult to follow. It often requires input from data authors and curators. And so one thing that is really interesting in this area is that we're having a session on flexible metadata because, you know, we want to remain interoperable, obviously, but we also want to support, you know, a very diverse community with very diverse data and metadata needs. So, so we'll be talking about that quite a bit over the next year. And increasing contributions, that kind of ties back into the metrics that Mercedes talked about, and we'll talk about how to contribute to the project as well, how to become one of those open source contributors. UX and UI, a lot of the work over the past year has been on the data set and file redesign, previews, filtering and sorting, and then also talk about some of the work coming in Dataverse 5 around buttons. And then quality, we closed like over 500 issues over the last year. So we're always, you know, squashing bugs that are having high impact in the community as they come up, you know, again, with the goal of to continue to, you know, provide a high quality product and platform. So I mentioned a couple of these when I was just talking through the strategic goals. So some of the features that we've implemented over the last year, I'll talk in some detail about. So I'll just jump right into the first one about variable metadata export. So this is a contribution from Scholars Portal. And if we think about, you know, if we think about data and metadata in Dataverse, we want to be able to enrich that really easily and then make that interoperable. So kind of coming from the left here, you can see the example of this called the data curation tool. And you can actually see how people can enrich the variable metadata that then gets saved back to Dataverse. And then that's, of course, available in a DDI HTML codebook, and then also through the DDI export. So this is, you know, when we want to provide that better metadata, this is one of the really powerful ways to enrich that metadata. And the data curation tool is an external tool at Dataverse. And if you want to learn more about this and other external tools, just a quick plug for the external tools session at the bottom of the slide there. One of the really neat things over the last year, and this was contributed by the Qualitative Data Repository at Syracuse University, are previewers. You know, we want to provide that better user experience, and a big part of that is providing that better in-app experience. And so by providing the previewers, it's one less step because the researcher doesn't need to download to see what this thing is about. The researcher can see it right in the Dataverse UI. And as part of that, if you've looked at a Dataverse search page before, which I'm sure you all have, on the left side, you'll see the facets. And so in parallel with the previewer development, we undertook some work to better identify unknown file types. And so that makes the previewers even more relevant because, again, more things can be previewed. And so this is available through the it's available on the file page, but then is also available throughout the app. So this is, so I talked about large data. Another really cool thing developed in the last year and made available in the 420 release, which is the most recent release, is multiple S3 stores. And this is important for two reasons. The first is that in the group that developed this, the Texas Digital Library, the use case is that there are multiple institutions using one Dataverse installation. So this allows better administration for those various institutions. But even at an institution like Harvard, where we're open to the world, we're able to use these multiple file stores to set up specific policies at the Dataverse level. So So if we wanted to provide larger upload for certain Dataverses, we now have the power to do that. So this is a feature that's really neat, and it really goes to sustainability of individual Dataverse installations. If you can, do things like chargebacks, it's really a powerful feature. So we were really excited about Texas Digital Library's contribution there. And then this, my emoji usage here. So before 420, there wasn't an option for what we call direct S3 upload. So what direct S3 upload does is it basically removes the barrier of the application server when you're uploading. It kind of sidesteps it, and so the file goes to S3 storage first, and then that file is made available in Dataverse. And so by removing the step with the application server, it allows for more reliable transfers of larger data. So last year we talked about initial large data support through rsync, and that really laid the groundwork for stuff like this, where we can get things onto the file system and then have those written back to Dataverse and findable in a typical way. So this is another contribution from Texas Digital Library and the Texas Advanced Computing Center. So it was really cool to see this this work get merged into Dataverse. And this was a good example of collaboration between Jim Myers, the developer from there, and the Dataverse team as we work together to track down a few edge cases and squash a few bugs before getting it merged into a develop branch and into a release. So one thing that's really interesting over the last year is the make data count support in Dataverse. So standardized metrics for data usage are something that is something that's a very emergent area, and so we're a very early adopter of this. And you can see the example there of make data count turned on in the qualitative data repository Dataverse. And so what this basically does is the views and downloads are tracked on the Dataverse installation itself, and then every night those views and downloads are processed using a standard called the counter code of practice. They're sent up to DataCite Hub, and then every night data citations come back from DataCite Hub, and that's powered by Crossref. And so it's kind of a round trip and it really goes back to impact that the researchers that are uploading data to Dataverse can see how their data is being cited. So we're really excited about the standardization. This is a community that is focused on standards. If you don't like standards, you're in the wrong place. And so it also really goes to impact, and we're really excited to get this merged in. And then I'll just talk briefly about Dataset Explorer. So last year, we talked about exploring at the file level. We've now enabled that at the Dataverse or the dataset level. And so as part of that, you'll be able to build external tools that leverage the entire data set instead of just a single file. And the common use case around this is that of computational reproducibility tools like CodeOcean, Rinku, Wholetail, things like that want to be able to work across that whole data set. And so this basically provides the door that people can step into from Dataverse, and then the Dataverse APIs are used to get the appropriate data by those tools. So we had hoped to have Dataverse 5 out for the community meeting here, but it'll be out soon after. We're just tracking down a few broken tests. We want to make sure that those tests are all passing before we release. And then there's also a few things that we're just trying to finish up. So the big part of Dataverse 5 is Payara. So Glassfish was our application server, and now we're moving to Payara. And in addition to a more modern application server, this will also enable things in the platform that are useful for Docker and Kubernetes, and a lot of stuff that we'll be talking about in the DevOps and installation deployments breakout tomorrow. Also, the dataset and file redesign has been going on for about the last year. We've been getting small improvements in each release, and the most recent improvement is new buttons. So we were reaching the point on the dataset and file pages where we were just adding more and more buttons, and it really wasn't scalable. And so all this cool stuff we're talking about over the next 2 days, we weren't going to be able to do it with our current dataset and file page because it wouldn't really be an appropriate container. So that'll be really awesome to roll out. Zip optimization. So if any of you have downloaded a large group of files from Dataverse and then open that zip sometime later and then seeing that manifest file that not all the files were included, we know that's a really bad experience. The reason that we weren't able to provide all the files is because the zipping was taking place on the application server, and we didn't want to have system instability. So by adding this zip optimization, we're now going to be able to really reduce the number of cases in which that happens, and so that'll be a much better experience. It was always, I always say it's like when you get a Lego set for Christmas and you don't open it for a couple of weeks and then you realize half the pieces are missing. That's how it feels when you open up one of those zip files where not all the files are present. So we're really excited about getting this out. We're updating a lot of our rules around file handling because since we rolled out directory support last year, we've been able to basically get Dataverse to work more like a file system. And this is really important for interoperability. Like in Dataverse 5, we'll be able to do things like allow files of the same name as long as they're in different directories of a data set, or allow files with the same checksums as long as they have different names. So we're able to, again, in the interest of interoperability, really update some of our rules around file handling. We've implemented the ability to reserve DOIs with DataSite. As we look at tracking data sets and files earlier in the process, we want to be able to reserve them with the external system. Right now we do reserve those DOIs locally, but we don't actually reserve them with DataSite. So this will be really this will be really welcome in the new release. And then last thing I'll mention is a new homepage visualization. If you go to dataverse.harvard.edu, you can see the Dataverse, or you can see the homepage as it currently exists. Lots of searching and browsing features, but we wanted to give it a little more of a pop to, kind of let people know what's going on in Dataverse, and that'll of course be available as part of Dataverse for any other installations that want to adopt it. So that's kind of a view of what has been released over the last year, what is coming in the immediate next release, Dataverse 5. And so now I want to talk about some of the stuff that's coming up. And this is, of course, the time where we have these breakout sessions because we are a community and we want to build these things together. So as I talk through this, I'll be mentioning the ways to kind of get involved in these discussions. So encapsulation and better support for code. So this is an area that we're currently funded by the Sloan Foundation for, and so we're really interested in working on this. And there'll be a session on this tomorrow at 3 p.m. For folks who want to dig deeper into this. I won't go into a lot of detail about this workflow. But if you're interested in any of those tools that you see up there, if you're interested in better code support for Dataverse, I really do encourage you to join that session tomorrow, because that'll be a good opportunity to really drive what the future of encapsulation and better support for code in Dataverse looks like. So sensitive data, another opportunity to really get involved with ongoing work here. So this will be tomorrow morning at 9:45. The two main pieces of sensitive data support in Dataverse are data tags and differential privacy, and we also include trust remote storage agents. With that and that opportunity to talk about that tomorrow, we'll cover all three of those. We'll talk about data tags, we'll talk about differential privacy, we'll talk about trusted remote storage agents, and it'll talk about other ways that we can do a better job of supporting sensitive data in Dataverse. So I talked about trusted remote storage agents. Just to give, so I mentioned trusted remote storage agents in the context of sensitive data, but trusted remote storage agents are something that can be used to support large data sets as well. So that discussion will be on Friday, Friday morning at 11:30. And to talk about what the workflow would look like for trusted remote storage agents for large data, and then again tomorrow for how that workflow would work for sensitive data. And you can learn more at cyberimpact.us. This is a project that's led by University of North Carolina. So I talked about the dataset and file redesign. Some things that we've worked on as part of that. We've been enabling this slowly across the last several releases, but we still have work to do. The zip optimization that I talked about, we want to provide a way to download an entire data set, and we can't really do that until we have that zip optimization in place. So that's an important part of the redesign. Flexible metadata is part of it because we want to, we want to provide different ways to present the data set and different ways to show metadata for the data set. And then data tags and sensitive data support and the ability to launch differential privacy tools. These are all things that we're taking into account as we continue to work on the data set and file redesign. And then flexible metadata. So the question is, really, how do we remain interoperable while still supporting our diverse community that has very diverse metadata needs? And so, so some of the things that have come up around around flexible metadata is things like external terms, external controlled vocabularies, metadata for Dataverses, folders, and files. And in the flexible metadata sessions, and there are 2 of them, in the flexible metadata sessions, we'll have people that are doing work in this area, and to talk about the work that's in progress, and to talk about how to get involved and contribute to those efforts. So again, that'll be across 2 sessions, and I do encourage y'all to check out the agenda with the details. So geospatial support in Dataverse is something that we'll be working on over the next year. For those of you who use Harvard Dataverse, you all know that we have a integration with WorldMap, and you can actually launch WorldMap from Harvard Dataverse from shapefiles. And then those who attend the community calls every other Tuesday, or those who attended the Texas Digital Libraries repository, or the Texas Digital Libraries webinar series, have both seen the Geodesy project out of UBC as an option for browsing geospatial data. But we're looking to expand on that over the next year. So the best way to get involved with that is to attend the geospatial data session tomorrow afternoon. And to talk about what the future of geospatial data support in Dataverse looks like. And then the last thing that I'll just mention as a future direction is regarding a more flexible UI. And the wonderful thing about an open source project is that people can tell you they want things by forking, and so as we look across the community and we see that there are a lot of different options for branding that people are doing, we're gonna take that into account, and we're gonna see what options we can make more flexible over the next year. And this may come up. This may come up in discussions in a few different sessions over the next couple of days, but also we'll look to continue those discussions through GitHub and other venues as well. And so just to kind of talk about the last part, how to get involved. I've talked about the importance of getting involved in the sessions here at the community meeting over the next couple of days. But just a reminder that we do have our board visible on GitHub at that URL there. You can see the roadmap at iq.harvard.edu on the products along the top. So there are ways to get involved, and then and so creating GitHub issues, whether it's a bug or a feature request, participating in calls for user testing, community discussions I've mentioned this week, but also we have our community calls, we have the community group, we have IRC, we have a lot of other channels. So, you know, we definitely do like hearing from the community, use cases, problems, again, bug reports, things of that nature, because we can all collaboratively work together to build a better product. And then I encourage you to look at making a pull request. This is something that I was intimidated about for a little while, but now I'm making lots of pull requests, much to the team's chagrin. But I really do encourage you to make a pull request, investigate it, and we are happy to step through it with you. It's really cool to see your changes get added to a release and included when that goes out. So this is where I would usually talk about things like metrics, but every community meeting, Mercedes takes that part of my session. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and end here. And I've talked about over the last year, like all the things that have been included in the product itself, but also in the last year we encouraged installations to send us videos about what they've been up to. So I'm gonna show that video real quick, and then we'll have time for questions.
Greetings from the steering committee for the Texas Data Repository. The institutions that are part of the TDR include Baylor University, Texas A&M International University, Texas A&M University, Texas A&M University Galveston, Texas State University, Texas Tech University, Texas Women's University, University of Houston, University of Texas at Arlington, and University of Texas at Austin.
Some of the things we've worked on this year include designing a new TDR logo, creating assessment and training and outreach standing committees, establishing a project management system and file naming convention for our work, cleaning up our public documentation, hosting 5 speakers for our webinar series, and developing onboarding materials for new steering committee members.
We are continuing to work on finalizing on a preservation protocol for Chronopolis, obtaining Core Trust Seal status, incorporating larger data sets into TDR, piloting a Carpentries membership, and integrating R into TDR.
And we plan to start working on implementing Google Analytics, archiving code and software, especially for the digital humanities, developing data curation workflows, targeting outreach to registered users and potential campus partners, and providing discipline-specific guidance. We miss you down in Texas.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this short heads up about what has been happening at Dataverse NO since the last Dataverse community meeting. First off, some basics about Dataverse NO. Dataverse NO is a national generic repository for open research data, mainly from researchers at Norwegian research institutions. The repository is operated at the UiT, the Arctic University of Norway, which makes it the northernmost Dataverse repository in the world. Since its establishment in 2017, the number of published datasets in Dataverse NO has been continuously growing. In numbers of published datasets, Dataverse NO is today Norway's second largest research data repository using DOIs. Let's now focus on 3 highlights from this year, summarized under the headings Partners, Workshop and Certification. In January, the University of Stavanger joined Dataverse NO as a partner institution. This means that there are now 9 universities partnering with Dataverse NO. Also in January, we organized the first European Dataverse workshop as a response to a growing interest in Dataverse in Europe. The workshop gathered over 70 participants from America and Australia and from 17 European countries. Have a look at the presentations and collaborative notes from the workshop, which are all available online. In March, Dataverse NO was certified by CoreTrust Seal, after a long application process lasting for about 2 years. We faced some challenging issues as we wanted to certify the entire repository, including all institutional collections. Our main answer to these challenges was to establish one common set of policies and guidelines to be applied to all content in the repository, and most importantly, the approach of having all datasets curated before publication. That was it. For more information, please use these addresses. Thank you for watching.
Welcome to the University of Virginia's Dataverse, what we call Libra Data. I'm Sherry Lake, the Scholarly Repository Librarian at the University of Virginia. And I'm going to demonstrate 3 features of Libra Data. First is our customized homepage, where researchers can easily add a data set by selecting their school or department or research lab, and then click the Add Data button. From the homepage, you can search data sets and files in all UVA dataverses, or you can browse selected sub-dataverses, or browse all datasets and files in Libra Data. Libra Data has installed file previewers, where files with registered MIME types are automatically viewable and are displayed on the data file page. As we see here, with a JPEG image of a 3D scanned image of a delicious everything bagel from Bodo's. UVA has taken advantage of Dataverse's Solar Index of metadata fields and has integrated UVA Dataverse's Solar Index records with the rest of our library catalog in its discovery layer based on Blacklight. So one can discover Libra Data datasets from the library catalog along with other digital collections and physical items. Once a data set is discovered in our library catalog, one can easily access the data set and files by clicking the Access Online button. Thanks for visiting the UVA Dataverse.
Welcome to the quick update about Scholars Portal Dataverse. Scholars Portal is the service arm of the Ontario Council of University Libraries. We've hosted Dataverse since 2012. Initially, this was for Ontario universities, but has since expanded over the past few years to 55 universities across Canada. We're also seeing some international reach. Over 1/3 of the unique visitors to the site in 2019 came from outside of Canada. There are a number of key features of our service. It's a bilingual platform, which means we can serve our users in French and English. Libraries administer the institutional Dataverse spaces and can build RDM workflows around data deposit and sharing. And Scholars Portal provides libraries and users support centrally. In terms of service growth, we can see an almost exponential increase over the past 4 years in terms of downloads. In April, we've reached the 1 million download milestone. A major focus of the past year was working on a national grant for RDM development work from Canary. As a result, we launched the Data Curation Tool, which is a modular application that allows users to add and edit variable level metadata for tabular files. Check out the external tool session later this week for more information. We also integrated Shibboleth for single sign-on as part of the Canadian Access Federation for participating institutions. 2 other development efforts involved connecting Dataverse to cloud storage in a test environment using the Ontario Library Research Cloud, and we developed a proof of concept integration with Globus file transfer for large files. If you'd like to hear more about these efforts, check out the remote storage and large data set session on Friday. Over the past year, we were engaging with national stakeholders, including the Canadian Association of Research Libraries Portage Network, on Dataverse North working groups, particularly in developing national policies. We've also been working on building local connections and touch points, including community building through a new listserv and monthly meetings, and helping to build training materials. Here are some ways to learn more. Thanks.
Dataverse at DANS. My name is Marion Wittenberg and I would like to present 3 services for which DANS is working on Dataverse installations. DANS, Data Archiving and Network Services, is the Netherlands Institute for Permanent Access to Digital Research Resources. We provide expert advice and certified services for researchers, data professionals and partners. Dataverse software we use for Dataverse NL, the web UI of EASY and the SHOCK project. Dataverse NL is a repository service for Dutch universities and research institutes, jointly offered by the participating institutes and DANS. Currently 14 institutes are participating. Listen to Henk van den Hoogen, Chair of the Advisory Board, what the advantages are of this collaboration.
For the University of Maastricht, Dataverse NL is a preferred platform for storing, sharing and publishing smaller datasets in an effective and efficient way. A big advantage of Dataverse NL is that the services are not built upon a traditional supplier-customer relationship, but on the principle of community building. Together with DANS, the member organizations work in harmony together towards a services platform that meets our requirements of fair data management.
The other repository service DANS maintains is EASY. Almost 130,000 datasets are available via EASY. Currently we are working on a new web UI of EASY for which we will use the Dataverse software. Listen to my colleague Jan van Mansum why.
We like Dataverse because it has functionality similar to our current system, which is called EASY. EASY was developed in-house, but it is becoming too expensive to maintain, so we are looking to replace it. Also, Dataverse has a very active global community. We think we have a valuable contribution to make. At the same time, we hope to benefit from the work of this community.
The third project we use the Dataverse software for is the SHOCK project, Social Sciences and Humanities Open Cloud, an European Horizon 2020 project, in which we work for Task 5.2 on the development of a research data repository service on the European Open Science Cloud for social science and humanities institutes currently without such a facility for the designated communities. We work with 5 other partners from Austria, Poland, Germany, Norway and Italy, belonging to 4 different European research infrastructures. My colleague Slava tells you what we are doing.
The goal of Dataverse SHOCK project is to deliver the mature and production-ready Dataverse repository available for all EOS partners. We have a core and application development teams following SESDA maturity model that will allow to get the highest possible level of software and services. All Dataverse components and related services should follow continuous integration and deployment with Jenkins pipelines, an automated testing process based on the Selenium framework. And we are sharing all these tests with all people inside of Dataverse community to make it even more sustainable. We are also building production-ready external services. For example, Weblate service would allow to synchronize all Dataverse translations. Our spreadsheet viewer already used in a lot of countries.
Thank you for your attention. Please contact me via email if you have any questions.
Hi, I'm Samuel from Leap Portugal, and I'm working with the Synergy European Project Group. I will present the WARSICA use case integration with Dataverse, revealing the architecture and integration challenges we are facing to implement the FAIR principles. The service quality assurance goal requires the release to be FAIR compliant. I will also mention some details about the SQA as a service development. I hope that we can exchange experiences in next Thursday breakout. See you.
Hi folks, I'm Oliver from Jülich, Germany. Thanks to Don and Slava for having me as a speaker in this session. My lightning talk later on is about Dataverse in cloud-enabled environments using containers and Kubernetes. Calling myself a DevOps for about 6 years now and pushing data management at Research Center Jülich, I started this community project about 2 years ago, and since then I am really a happy member of the thriving Dataverse community and try to give back as much as possible. We recently built Jülich Data, our institutional repository on Kubernetes, with this very project. And primarily our repo is used to index all of our existing and future data as metadata sets. Research in Jülich is very diverse, and so using a scalable platform based on cloud technology is key for us, and with varying file sizes from KB to petabytes, we really refuse being scientists' main storage, but nevertheless, we aim to support management of long-tail data in daily life of science. I'm very eager for your input and your questions, so please feel free to reach out during or after the community meeting.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Harvard Dataverse repository. We would like to introduce the community to our new Harvard Dataverse support website. The website features a Getting Started page, our new curation services, our events including our monthly Dataverse workshops free to the research community, and the policies that govern the Harvard Dataverse. We have a newish landing page for our Dataverse repository. The repository continues to be free and open to the worldwide research data community for data sharing and data discoverability. The Harvard Dataverse holds over 98,000 datasets and close to 4,000 personal dataverses for journals, research projects, organizations and institutions, teaching projects, labs, and more. We now have over 34,000 registered users. The Harvard Dataverse is open for self-service data sharing or paid curation services by our team of trained data providers. We provide support for custom metadata blocks, file folder hierarchy preservation, and we utilize the Data Explorer tool for analysis and visualization, including using the file level previewers. Some of our journals are already using replication verification services offered by Odum Institute Data Archives and CodeOcean. We also plan to support the sharing of sensitive data using the data tag tools in the very near future. Additional UI updates available include the new data dropdown, the new host Dataverse page at the top of each Dataverse and dataset creation page, and the new author identifier for the author ID schema metadata, and the new footer that can be added to the Dataverse page. We would like to take the time to highlight our COVID-19 data collection based on all COVID-related Dataverses and datasets hosted by Harvard Dataverse. Last year, we started our application for the Core Trust Seal certification. We are basing our application on a set of managed collections that are supported by policies, data management guidelines, and tasks that support fair standards and good curation practices. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the Community Meeting 2020.
Great. Thank you again to everybody who submitted videos, and thanks to Wayne for putting those together. Cool. So next up, I mean, we have plenty of time for questions about anything that's come in so far. Kaylin, are you okay to kind of take us through those?
I am. So I've got 4 questions so far that I've pulled out of the Q&A and chat. If you have more questions, please dump them into the Q&A and I'll pull those in too. So the first up, Danny, is are embargoes still planned for next fall?
Yeah, that's a good question. And when I talked about the roadmap with Mercedes, there were things that we wanted to highlight here, but we really need to have a meeting after the community meeting, taking into account all the inputs and determining if that is still part of the roadmap. We know it's something that is that has been requested by the community and something that we've said in the past that we want to work on, but keep an eye out for a roadmap update over the next couple of weeks to see where that ends up. And we know it's something that has been requested, and if it's something where there's someone in the community who wants to work on that, we'd love to talk with you.
Great. We've got another question about the roadmap, which is specifically, is Research Object Crate on the roadmap, or are you thinking about adding that to the roadmap?
Sure. So if Mercedes wants to take this one, be happy to.
Yeah. Thank you. So it is a very highly considered as to be in the roadmap. This is one of the areas that will be discussed in the encapsulation session. So as part of that work, and Trisovic with others will chair that session. We plan to include research objects also as one of the, research objects and research objects, an arrow crate as the metadata to help collect or package all the outputs, including data, code, workflows, and other outputs. So it is part of the plan, but as I guess we're reiterating what Danny says, that we wanted to get the input from the community to see the demand, the interest in all those features, and bring it as part of the roadmap with the contributions from the community. But it is, go to the encapsulation section for more.
Excellent, thank you, Mercedes. This question was answered in the Q&A by Phil, but I think it might be of broad interest in general. And that is, are you anticipating many or any API changes between version 4 and version 5?
So sorry, was the question answered, or?
Phil mentioned it, but I think I don't know if you want to expound on it a little bit. Phil indicated that there would not be any API changes between those two, but I don't know if there are any other specific topics related to the API that you might want to say a few words about beyond that.
Sure. I mean, so our goal generally is to add more API endpoints. wherever possible and to allow you to do anything using the API that you can do through the UI. But at the same time, we don't want to introduce any breaking changes for those that integrate with Dataverse. So off the top of my head, I don't know if there are any new API endpoints included in Dataverse 5, but we will continue to introduce new API endpoints. But we don't want to break any integrations.
Excellent. Okay, and then this next question is about customizing Dataverse. So the question is there a step-by-step guide to customizing Dataverse to store FAIR data according to FAIR principles?
So,
yeah, maybe Merce, do you have some thoughts?
Yeah, go ahead, Merce.
Danny, also happy if you want to say something. Well, I'll reply, but also Danny, if you want to add something.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I know a guide that is step by step. I want to point out that Philip Gonzet from Dataverse NO has published just very recently a very useful article that includes a lot of what Dataverse NO has done for supporting FAIR data. So, and it's also, in the past I had created a set of slides and some talks that relate to that. And so Philip's article is a huge extension on that initial work. So I recommend that. If others in the community want to say something, we can get people to talk. I mean, they can also participate in the answers. So Danny, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, so I'll just say briefly that if you do have some initiatives around the fairness of data at your institution that you want to talk about, I can certainly enable attendees to talk. Just raise your hand and I'll be able to do that. I'll just mention briefly in the flexible metadata session, there'll be some discussion of the Dataverse North group that's been working on some metadata standards. And then also I think I saw Peter Corelli in the chat. He's talked about metadata quality a few times, and I believe he has a tool in his main research area to focus on metadata quality. So if there's anything that he could share, it would be great as well.
Okay. Yeah, Philip, I see that you shared Philip shared the article. I just wonder if you want to say a few some things about your publication, your recent publication, Philip.
Well, yes, it's as I just added to the chat. It builds on Mercy's presentation at the European Dataverse workshop. It's a review of how all the features in the Dataverse software contribute to the fairness of data published in a Dataverse repository. And then also I had a look at what we at Dataverse NO, how we contribute to make the data even more fair, for instance, by curation. Yeah, I added all the DOI link here in the chat.
Thank you.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, so there's one additional question that we have related to the roadmap as well, which is, are you considering including citation count or field for citation count for data sets in the future?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we hope that we'll get that from Make Data Count, and that would be available to any Dataverse installations that use DataCite to mint DOIs. I know we have some Dataverse installations that use handles, and in that case, Make Data Count metrics wouldn't be available. But the goal would be for a Dataverse installation to send up the views and downloads nightly, and then to get back from Crossref the citations, and then be able to display those in the UI as well as through the API.
Okay, I think I've captured all of the questions from both chat and Q&A. Oh wait, one just came in. Oh no, it was a thank you. So, all right, we're all set. I think we're set, Danny. So if there are any other questions, I guess we have a couple of seconds to type those into the Q&A or the chat. And I think we're good.
Yeah, and if folks have anything that that they have questions about, y'all know how to get in touch. Support at dataverse.org, the community group, GitHub, any of those venues are great for questions. And then if there are questions about specific topics in the community, hopefully it's appropriate for one of the sessions over the next 2 days. Thank you. So the next thing on our sorry, I got new rollerblade wheels for my chair, so I'm just kind of going all over the place. Don't mind me. So the next thing that we have is Sonia is going to talk about some of the stuff that's coming up over the next 2 days. Well, I guess this evening and then Thursday and then Friday at the community meeting, and then it looks like we'll probably get out of here a little bit early. So so Sonia, take it away.
Can you see my screen? Okay, so what's ahead for the Dataverse Community Meeting 2020? Just a reminder that although we end at about 1:30 today, there is a session tonight at 6 p.m. For the GDCC Govern Session 1. The speakers will be Mercedes Crosses and Jonathan Crabtree, and it's open to all existing Global Dataverse Community Consortium members and those interested in becoming members or learning more about GDCC. So that's tonight. You'll have a break in the middle here, and then we'll hopefully see you tonight. And this session does repeat in the morning at 8 o'clock. So for Thursday, we start with 2 sessions, concurrent sessions, the GDCC Governance Session 2, and then the Core Trust Seal Certification. So the Core Trust Seal is for those interested in obtaining the seal, the certification, and it is the most widely used certification for data repositories. We have a number of Dataverse repositories in our communities that already have this certification, or those that are in the process of completing their application. So you can come and learn more about the processes and experience from all of these different installations. For starting at 9:45, we have 3 breakouts until 2:45, supporting sensitive data in Dataverse, which will talk about data tags, and it will present the current status of how Dataverse will support this feature, including an overview of methodology and review of tools under the development and the community. And we have a list of all of the co-chairs that will be present for that session. We have a DevOps installation deployments and automated testing session at 11:30. The community uses technologies such as Vagrant, Ansible, Docker, and others to help with the development process and running Dataverse in production and non-production environments. So you are welcome to join this session to learn more. And then at 1:15, we have the geospatial data session. And this is going to bring together those working with Dataverse repository services for geospatial data, as well as those exploring these possibilities. We are still on Thursday. In late afternoon, starting at 3, we will have breakouts on encapsulation. So these are the virtual containers that have become the integral part of the research process, but there is no standardized way of disseminating them. So this session is going to investigate a sustainable way of capturing and storing virtual containers while complying with the FAIR principles. We will have a new featured demo by Danny and myself, so you can come and learn about the Dataverse releases and features from over the last year. And we have 2 sessions for the flexible metadata. One is Thursday evening at 6, and the next will be Friday morning. So for the flexible metadata session will be hour-long breakouts to provide an opportunity to discuss what is currently possible, to learn about the range of potential new features being proposed, and to engage with others to help identify priorities and discuss these ideas and how they can be integrated into the design and roadmap for long-term development. So again, on Friday, we start with flexible metadata session 2 at 8:30. Was that 8:30 or 8 o'clock, Danny? I might have put that time in.
I will check the agenda
Okay.
and I will let you know.
And then we have external tools. In this session, we'll review how external tools work in Dataverse, learn about external tools that have been developed by the community, and discuss how we can expand on these tools for powerful Dataverse features. And then at 11:30, we have remote storage and large data sets. Presentations will cover data upload developments, including Globus integration, direct upload to S3, as well as trusted remote storage agents for sensitive data and managing multiple data stores. At 1:15, we will have a closing session and social events by Mercedes and Danny. Just so you don't forget that for Friday at 1:15, the chairs of the breakout sessions should have a one summary slide for their breakout to bring us all a summary of what took place during their sessions. And that will begin at 1:15 on Friday. All set. Thank you for coming.
Sonia, John raised his hand. John Huck raised his hand. Is there a question from John?
Let me check. Let me check the chat. Sorry.
Okay.
John Huck said no, sorry.
Oh.
So Danny Brooke, it's 8:30 for the flexible metadata session. So I did have it right. So it is 8:30 a.m. for the Friday flexible metadata session 2.
Yep. And there's a question from Brian Westra about the flexible metadata sessions. Will they be different from each other or the same?
No, they're going to be the same.
Sorry, just a quick correction to that. They are going to be different. So for GDCC, it'll be the same session, but for flexible metadata, they'll be different. They'll have different different presenters. No worries, no worries.
The presenters will be different. Sorry, covering the same. Yes.
Covering different content. I think. Yeah. So 2 different sessions.
2 different everything. Okay.
Yes.
Yep. Cool. So I mean, we so rarely are together, or together as we can be in at this point in time in the world. We're so rarely together. I do really want to give an opportunity for folks to ask more questions if they do have them. We'll just give it just a second if folks want to add anything to the question and answer or raise their hands, and we can grant the ability to talk.
I would just like to announce something that just came as we were presenting. So we got I'm really thrilled that we got it just now, like in 5 minutes ago, a Sloan grant to help with the encapsulation work. That will, so yes, arrow crate will be included. It's pretty much sure now. I think that we can say, or at least it will be plan of the work. We need to work out the details about the roadmap, of course. But yeah, we're really excited about continue working on reproducibility and improving the deposit of code and data.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That'll definitely make the encapsulation session more interesting tomorrow. Very cool. Very cool. Great. So there is one question in the chat about installing Dataverse on Docker. Is it a good choice for a production installation? So Slava, if you are interested in taking that, I'll be happy to enable you to talk.
Yeah. So well, I just missed the question.
Sorry, I'll repeat it. We just installed Dataverse on Docker. Is it a good choice for a production installation?
Well, I would say the best choice, of course, is to install in Kubernetes. If you have administrator who will take care about making Docker up and running, so it's also possible to run it from Docker.
Got it. Thanks, Slava. And Oliver in the chat says, come and let's talk tomorrow about this. And he means the DevOps installation deployments and automated testing session that's tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time.
Yeah, yep.
Cool. Are there other questions? Okay, cool. So I want to thank everybody, and I would like to thank the panelists that are still here, and I'll be sending very nice thank you notes to the panelists that gave those great presentations this morning. It's always great to see everybody from the community. I wish we were all here behind me in the Sci auditorium instead of on Zoom. But thank you all for continuing to make this a great community, and thank you for joining the community meeting. And we're looking forward to the next 2 days. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. We have lots of meetings ahead of us, a lot of Zoom meetings. We look forward to all of them. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, Danny. Is everybody? Oh, people are still on. Okay. Yes.
Nice job, Dwayne, with the videos.
That was really nice.
Thank you. They did. Everybody else did most of the hard work.
No, you did a lot of the hard work. Everybody did.
Really
what a wonderful first day, yeah? I just wish we could go to play soccer and have some drinks after together.
Wouldn't that be nice?
We can Friday night. Everybody bring your mask, bring your cleats. Everybody stay 6 feet apart. Miss you too, Michael. Of course, I'll be missing.
It's a lot of fun to see people joining and people leaving.
Yep.
Wonderful. Hey, Tanya.
Hi, that was great.
The tweets were great and the wonderful.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. So
it's great.
All the talks, all the presentations, everything, and seeing names, familiar names in the list that usually we see in person. It was really lovely, and new names too, which is great.
Yep. So I do see we still have a few people in the webinar. So I am gonna go ahead and end it, and I will.
Okay. Yeah, Danny, I'm glad that your computer survived.
Hey, me too. It was a little bit iffy there. It felt like it was going to take off, but I'm glad I had everyone ready to support me.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.